Hello and welcome back to another knitting pod. I am Lena and I'm so happy to be with you. It's Friday and Friday is my favorite day because you've got the whole weekend in front of you. So I hope if it is Friday for you, you're having a good one and involves some knitting. I'm glad we get to spend some time together today and chat about life and knitting and everything in between. So yay. It's been a really good week here. It was a little bit of a rough transition from being out of town and being in vacation mode to coming back to real life. I think we were late to school every single day. So majorly winning there, but that's okay. Being late to school 5 minutes used to make me nuts, and I would just be like this stress ball and probably ruin my kid's entire morning. And I just don't do that anymore. I just don't think it's worth it. And we just still jam out in the car and hopefully have a better day than we would. So anyway, I hope it's been a good week for you and I hope it's involved some knitting. As you can see, I finally am wearing my Ranunculus to show you. I'm so happy with it. It turned out absolutely beautifully. It's kind of hard to see. You can see my sleeves are long sleeves. One of my puppies is coming to visit here. You can't see her. We'll hope she doesn't snore as she visits with us. Anyway, so you can see the gorgeous yoke is, this lacy. You're distracting me. Go away. Sorry. I did not do an I-cord bind off. I just bound off in regular, like a stretchy bind off. And like I told you guys once before, I think it actually kind of looks like an I-cord bind off if you look at it because it's, it rolls a little bit. But I have rambled on about this one so much that I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but I have to say it is possibly my favorite top I've ever made. It just fits so perfectly. I feel like at my best, I don't wanna say my best self, that's not the right way to say it. I feel like it's just the most accurate representation of me. And it's not even hot pink or Gravender. It's this stunning brown color. So I can't quite explain why I love it so much, but I just do. It's got so much ease. It's so comfortable, and I think it's so flattering. I think that's why so many people like it. I have been wearing it so much since I finished it. I think, so this is Pearl Soho Linen Quill in the colorway Fresh Nutmeg. And I measured it the other day. I used one 400-yard ball. Actually, I think it's 437 yards per 100-gram ball. I think that's right. It's a very thin, lightweight fingering weight. I used about like a ball and a quarter, I would say. Maybe like 130 grams, I want to say. So my point in saying that is it's such a great project for yarn you have lying around. Like, you don't need a huge sweater quantity of yarn for this. So I could just imagine how many of these I could make in different colors and weights and how different the effect would be. And I could have one for every day of the week. It went by so fast. I literally knit it, I think, in about 2 weeks. If I hadn't been knitting something else at the same time, I bet I could have knit it faster. The yoke was so much fun, and then the body and sleeves whiz by because it's on such big needles. So, I love this pattern. It made me realize that I need to stop being such a creature of habit and comfort and try new designers. That was like the biggest lesson of this. I get so stuck in my Stephen West and Drea Renee grooves. They are like my two go-to designers. Obviously, they're both so talented and have such a backlog. Is that the right word? I don't think that's the right word. I'll just say they have a huge library of designs. So varied. It's like hats, cowls, shawls, tops. Stephen West even has leggings. But it's so important not to just get, in that rut almost of design, of knitting only to the designers that you love and know. Sometimes I have ventured out and it has not paid off. And I'm like, it's a waste of buying that pattern because it just didn't pan out. But most of the time it works out and you learn so much more. You explore other designers' styles. I just think that is so awesome to be able to do as a knitter, just to push yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And, it got me thinking that I used to think of being a knitter and not designing my own knits as almost being like a passive consumer of designers' work. And then while I was making this, because there's so much leeway in your choice, you get to kind of choose your own adventure. In terms of yarn weight and color and sleeve style and collar style and the way you might finish it. It just got me thinking of this not quote, but a writer I had seen speak years and years ago. It has to be like 15 years ago. And I wish I remembered who it was. I want to say it was David Robleski who wrote a book called The Story of Edgar Sawtelle. If you have not read The Story of Edgar Sawtelle, oh my God, you really should read it. It is a spectacular book. But the point is, when I saw him speak, he was talking about how books are one of the only forms of art that honestly weave themselves into the reader's lives. So you're almost co-creating the art with the author because you're reading this book over the span of, say, a month, and it is becoming part of your life in that month, and the experiences you are having in your life almost intertwine with the story. And say you read that book when you're 25, it's going to be a whole different experience than when you read it if you were 50. And co-creating that artistic experience together is so incredibly beautiful. And when he described that, it just struck me so much. And when I was contemplating this, how much I loved this Ranunculus piece, I was thinking that it's the same thing with knitting. We are not, as knitters, just passive, kind of robotic recipients and machines that churn out the knitting. We are participating in that design process by all the choices we make. The knitting patterns we choose and live with for a month or 2 months or 2 years, they weave themselves in and out of our lives in the same way. Like I said one time, how I can remember where I've made every piece and what was going on and how excited I was and my struggles. And it's all that is just in that garment. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if any of that is making sense, but it just made me feel so happy and grateful for knitting and how it is a collaborative experience with the designer. And I think that's why we get so emotionally attached, or maybe it's just me, in my mind, Stephen West and Andrea Mowry and all these incredible designers are truly people in my life, even if I haven't met them yet. I did meet Andrea Mowry, you know this, but we're still just imaginary friends. Anyway, I digress. You know how I get on sometimes, but that is how I feel. I would love to know if you've ever felt that way, that feeling of co-creating your knitting with the designer and with your friends and your community. Anyway, enough about that. Love it. Gonna make it again. Moving right along. If you saw my post, my video that I posted earlier this week, I opened up my La Bien-Aimée package that I'd ordered for myself for my birthday to knit myself a birthday sweater. And I was so excited. It was really fun. You got to kind of really see my brain like processing it in real time. I was concerned that they had sent me the wrong combination of skeins. I thought I had ordered 2 of the sport weight and 2 of the mohair, but I hadn't. I had ordered 3 of the sport weight and 1 of the mohair because that is what the pattern I had chose required. And I'll show you, I got to cast it on that afternoon, and oh my goodness, you guys, it is incredible. I cast on the Lace and Fade Boxy by Joji Locatelli. Again, similar to the Ranunculus, I have never knit anything by Joji. I know she is incredibly popular. I know she's incredibly prolific. So many patterns. Like, how do these people churn out such beautiful designs? I have no idea. I am just endlessly inspired. I cannot tell you how much I'm enjoying this knit. Here it is. It's a little tough to see because it sort of rolls because it's all stockinette. So it started from, this is the top. I think this is the back. In fact, it's the back. I know it's the back. And then so that was the first repeat. And then now I am at this gorgeous lace. I love it so much. I feel like I say this so much, and I guess that makes me very lucky because I must be choosing patterns that bring me a lot of joy, because I have just get this warm, fuzzy feeling from these knits. It's just watching the yarn unfold. I chose this Wandering Flock sport weight yarn. This is a sport weight yarn, obviously. It's called in the base name is Baby Paca. It's mohair, alpaca, and I believe there's like 10 or 20% nylon in there, which I like because I feel like it's a little more hard wearing. Maybe it won't pill as much. I think it's a 2-ply, and it is gorgeous. The colorway is Mermaid Parade, and it's got all these like neon speckles and blues and pinks, and then the same colorway in the mohair lace. It just knits up so differently. I said it in my opening, when I opened the package, it's just this mohair. I guess I'm not a yarn dyer, but it just seems to absorb the color very differently. It almost reminds me of watercolors, where when you use watercolors, the paint kind of spreads. That's what it feels like, whereas this is speckly. So it just gives us such a cool effect. Even my husband said, "Oh, wow." High praise. He thought it was so beautiful. Also, in this lace pattern, it's so simple, but it was so fun to knit. So in her version, she does a fade, thus the name Lace and Fade Boxy, of all those stockinette stripes. She has this gorgeous fade from like a very light, it reminds me of coffee, and it looks like she's put like a little more creamer in each of those stripes, because it goes from like darker brown all the way up to very subtle tan. And it is so beautiful. Her version was stunning. I don't know. My friend Sharon made a version, and I saw it was in one color, just like this. I think it was like a steelish, grayish blue. And I thought it was so beautiful in one color that I think I'm not making this pattern I really want to make because I can't find the exact fade, and the yarn she used isn't super accessible to me. I couldn't really find someone in the United States that had it in stock. But anyway, I am obsessed with the colorway I picked. Kind of similar to this, it has a very oversized boxy fit, which I really, really like. I just find it so easy to wear. I also like it because it's very thin, similar to this. So, you know, we live in Boulder, Colorado, where it's often really cold, and no sweater alone is going to cut it. You're always going to wear your big jacket or a fleece or something. But then when you go out to a restaurant, you're not sitting there in a big oversized jacket. You take it off, and I'm just so much more comfortable in a lightweight, breathable piece. So I just feel like this is going to be very wearable through spring and summer and fall and winter to add, you know, your jacket. And I'm just one of those people that I love wearing my knits. I wear something I knit every single day. In fact, I feel like knitting garments has ruined me for real life clothes. I know these are real life clothes, but you know what I mean, like ready to wear clothes you buy at the store. I don't think there's one time this season I have worn a non-hand knit sweater. It has ruined me for all my clothes. So if it's not athletic wear or hand knit, I'm not wearing it. Like I wear a ton of yoga pants and tank tops and leggings because I teach fitness and yoga. But if I'm not, I'm still in leggings and a tank top, and I have a hand knit sweater over on top. So I really should just get rid of all my clothes. I don't wear anything. I just have a closet full of clothes I do not wear. Do you guys feel this way? I'm wondering if anybody else feels this way. And I can imagine in a few years, I've only been knitting for 2 years. In a few years, I might literally have a closet full of hand knits, which would be just a dream, an absolute dream. Because I told you, wearing my hand knits makes me feel like my insides match my outsides. It's the best. I don't know what we'd do without knitting. So yeah, my lace and fade boxy, I've never knit a Hohi pattern. It was a very different experience. The Ranunculus pattern, which is the last sweater I made, it just totally spoils you because it's really a thorough pattern in terms of, I've told you this before, if you've not knit it, she has like a little diagram of the sweater, and then every section, it has like a highlighted where on that pattern you're working. So I just love being able to visualize and really pinpoint what I'm working on. I do not like just like blindly following a pattern without understanding the construction. My hope is like every time I'm really working at understanding construction of the garment, I am becoming a better knitter. I just think it's more information. You have more depth of knowledge. And then like when you make a mistake, you understand what you're trying to do to maybe you can fix it better. And anyway, it's like when you love something, you want to know everything about it. That's how I feel about yarn and knitting. I want to know everything I can. So I really try to understand the pattern as I'm building it. And this pattern is not like that. I would say it's not at all like difficult to follow, but it's just not as obvious. It's not laid out as obviously like what is happening. Like straight out the gate on this pattern, there's a lot of short row shaping. So that kind of confused me. I'm sure you do this and you're a much more experienced knitter than I am, but using a stitch marker where your short row turn is, like if you're doing German short rows or this is wrap and turns. For the first few, I didn't put a stitch marker where I wrapped and turned because I was like, oh, I'll be able to see it. But it's just, then I found like when I was coming back across and had to pick up the wrap and knit the stitch together with its wrap to close that gap, I was kind of like hesitant and pausing and like searching for that stitch. Whereas if I just put a marker where I did that turn, then I'm just like zooming to it, take off the thing, knit it and keep going. And it just made it a lot more fluid of that section, the short row shaping. So if you are a newer knitter, I highly suggest lots of stitch markers. My friend Sharon had told me, she's a knitting teacher, and she told me that, you know, putting stitch markers between the lace repeats is really helpful, and it was highly helpful. So each of these lace repeats is 10 stitches. So I would put, I think something like that. Don't hold me to it. It's 10 stitches and then 10 rows, I believe, of that lace section. And if you just put a stitch marker between each lace repeat, it's just so much easier to kind of know that you're staying on track and maybe prevent making like a mistake, like you forgot a yarn over, or you didn't, you know, have 3 stitches in between the yarn overs or whatever. It just makes it a lot easier. So I highly recommend, if you are using this pattern or knitting anything with lace, use stitch markers. Don't be afraid to do that. I just think it's, I don't know, like, let's make our lives easier and enjoy our knitting more. So yeah, I love this. There's something about stripes, whether they're colors or different material, or in this case, both, like, you know, pattern and material. It just makes it like you just are so excited to get to the next section, and like seeing it reveal itself, just, I don't know. It's so encouraging, and it just makes the knitting so much fun. I think like it's one of those patterns that feels like just like the Goldilocks, where it's not mindless completely and it's not super hard. Like I could, you know, hang out and talk to my kids and or my husband and knit this. So if you are so inclined, I think this is a really fun pattern. And I like how versatile it is in terms of all year wear. So yeah, that is that. I started it a few days ago. I anticipate kind of zooming through it. One, somebody had left a comment saying Hohi, she's knit a lot of Hohi patterns, and she has, Hohi has a very loose gauge. And I was like, well, that explains why I actually, which I never get gauge. I'm so sorry. This earbud today is just not wanting to stay in. I never get gauge with the recommended needles, and I always have to go down because I'm a very loose knitter. This was like the first time in ages that I hit gauge with the recommended needles. So I just thought that was funny. I'm honestly like more inclined now to pick up Hohi patterns, because a lot of like Andrea Mowry, I always have to drop a needle size. So it just makes the gauge swatching process a little longer. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. And yeah. I also cast on just this morning. I had not planned to, but you know, I think I realized when I was knitting this and the pink hat that I really liked having 2 projects that were very different. The Lace and Fade Boxy, like today my son has a basketball game. I know, it's everybody's favorite Friday night activity. But he has a basketball game, and I, of course, I'm gonna take knitting. But if I'm at that lace section, that's not like, I don't wanna take a pattern, or I know you can have it on your phone, but I will end up messing up the lace section. So I want something smaller and just kind of easy to knit, because I'm still watching the game. Of course, still watching the game, but like when there's a timeout or something, I am gonna knit. So that is all to say. I told you guys I really needed to knit my kids' hats, and I finally got the push I needed. My son, my kids' school, they do this really cool thing called Winterim in March. All the grades, K through 12, basically have adventures. The littler kids usually have local adventures, but from middle school on, they go travel. And my son is going on a trip to Puget Sound to live on a boat and sail on this boat in Puget Sound for a week or 5 days or something like that. How cool is that? Number one, like, that is so freaking cool. I'm really excited. I've never done anything like this, and I'm just really excited for like such a different experience. Like, They are living on this boat with, you know, a bunch of other kids and the crew, and they get to just experience something so different. But anyway, when we were having this Zoom meeting with the people running this, they were saying how it gets so cold, and obviously it's wet. And they said, do not send anything cotton. Cotton apparently takes forever to dry. I did not know this. Only wool and layers. And I was like, I just want to send a hat I made with him for him, because I won't be able to talk to him for like a week, less than a week, I think, but that's a long time to not talk to your 13-year-old. And so it'll make me feel like a little piece of me is with him if he has a hat I made him. So I cast on this hat. It's a baby. It's so cute. You know, again, I'm a loose knitter, so I'm making the 20-inch hat. This is Pearl Soho's wide rib hat. So the reason I chose this hat is, first of all, I thought the ribbing looks really cool because it is 3 pearls and a knit. So it's not your traditional 2x2 ribbing, which I thought was a fun effect. Number 2, I told you I ain't doing no more fingering weight hats. That took forever. Like, I worked on this, cast on to this for like 15 minutes. So look how fast that's going. And I only stopped because I wanted to come chat with you. So I feel like I could finish this weekend, to be honest. So I wanted a worsted weight. I liked the way it looked, and a lot of their hats on Pearl Soho are all ribbing or all fisherman's rib or all brioche or something. This is a ribbed section that folds over like the brim, and then the rest of it is stockinette. So, you know, I love a plain stockinette, round and round, no purling. I feel like I'm gonna whip it out in no time, and it's gonna look really clean and classic. And I hope he loves it. I really hope. This is Malabrigo Rios. It's a superwash, 100% merino. I'm really hoping it's not itchy. I sometimes feel like handmade hats can be itchy, more itchy than like the kind of beanies you buy at the store. I'm really hoping the fact that this is 100% superwash keeps it from being itchy. I dropped down a full needle size for the ribbing, even though they did not recommend that. I think this is a it's a 3.75 millimeter. I think the recommended is a 4.5, but I know myself, and and how much, number 1, ribbing stretches. Number 2, I'm a loose knitter. So I dropped down in hopes that it fits his little noggin really well and that he likes it. You know, you never know. If it's itchy, he's not going to wear it, but if he doesn't wear it, I'll wear it because it's a really cool color. It's like this denim color almost. I've had this in my stash forever, so I don't know what the name is. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description box. But I like it because it's not solid. It's got the beautiful like variegation. He wanted something simple. I wanted to do like a funky color work hat, but I think he wanted something simpler. So yeah, we'll see how this turns out. I'm excited about it, and I'm excited how fast it's going. So yeah, that is all the knitting I have. I feel like I don't have a lot of knitting because I probably didn't knit as much over our ski trip that was last weekend. Or no, I take that back. I knit plenty, but I already showed you the hat because I was wearing it on Monday. And I worked on the twists and turns, but it's nothing like that revolutionary to see. I'd rather show you when I have a bigger section done. I have to say about the twists and turns real quick. I found it really difficult this time how this section, the clue 3 with those 2 strips, it's just so hard to finish a really long section and then have to do the exact mirror image of it again on the other side. I find it difficult to stay like motivated. That's why I think I have to just take breaks. Whereas like last year when it was just a traditional kind of section by section building in the semicircle shape, I felt like you're more kind of, there's more momentum. Whereas when you have to do one really long strip and then you finally finish it, and now you have to do the exact same thing on the other side, whew, it's a lot. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint. So I probably won't touch that for a while, but that's fine. What else? Life is good. I think the last time we had a proper episode, I had told you guys that it had just been a really rough parenting week, that my 13-year-old was just struggling with the typical things we all struggle with throughout our lives, you know, how we fit into our community and how it's hard when those relationships start to change, and there's just so much push and pull, right? And I think middle school is just like a complete, it's like a petri dish of all that. It's not low level, it's very high level. It's high emotion. They're all together all day. It's so much change within them and outside of them and the expectations of them. Anyway, all of that just created the perfect stew of, you know, a difficult week. But we got through it. We have an amazing support system at our school, and I felt like we got through it. And then we had our little break and we went into the mountains and skied, and it was just such a well-timed break. I think sometimes we just need to like step away, get some space, and then when we go back to the situation that was difficult, maybe we've got fresh eyes, maybe we've got a deeper reservoir of patience, maybe we, you know, have enough distance to let some growth happen. And I have to tell you guys, if you have kids, I am 100% sure you know what I'm saying here. As a parent, you can give wisdom, you can try to help them, you can try to lead them. And 99% of the time, when you're talking or explaining or trying to convince or whatever it is, you're like, I have no idea if this is landing, right? Like, they're upset, they want to push you away, they're like, whatever, just, I don't want to talk about it. And you just don't know, right? It's like planting seeds in the ground. Maybe they'll sprout, maybe they won't. There were a few days this week that were the equivalent of like seeing a tiny seedling and that tiny little green sprout above the dirt. It was one of those moments where you're just like, I saw these shifts in my child that were awe-inspiring to me, that probably to anyone else would be like imperceptible, but to me, who has been the gardener in this situation, to watch him change even a little and grow a little bit more and have a little more grace that he's giving himself and others, it's like possibly the most rewarding thing in the world. Truly, parenting is not for the faint of heart, and there's not a lot of reinforcement for us as parents, positive reinforcement along the way. We don't get a paycheck. We don't get high fives. We don't get a job well done, you know, fine, maybe when they like graduate or go to college, but we got to take what we can get, and when we can watch our kids change in those positive ways, I just think we have to pause and recognize those things and high five ourselves for that. Like, give yourself props when you see your hard work paying off. And to me, seeing my kid become a better version of himself, like closer to who I know he can be, that's like the biggest payout. Anyway, that's my child update. And I also realized, last thing I promise, that sometimes with kids, things are good. Sometimes things are rough, and that's always the way it's going to be. And to almost try to be just less emotionally reactive, like just trying to be steadier. Like when it's rough, knowing that he'll get through it, we'll get through it, everybody will get to the other side. And when things are good and there's growth, to remember, be humble, take it as it comes, enjoy the moment, but know there's probably some choppier waters around the corner. And that's fine. Just like being more like a cruise ship rather than like a tiny sailboat. I want to feel less rocked and more sturdy and steady and grounded for them. I think everybody would rather have their support system be grounded than like frantic and really reactive. Do you know what I mean? So that's all that's been going on in my mind about parenting and the like. So if you have any thoughts on that, please comment. I have to tell you guys, like I was saying before about how books and knitting and designing are a co-creation. This podcast and every podcast, I imagine, is a co-creation also. Like when you leave comments, you are putting ingredients into my podcast pot. Like you will never understand how much your comments mean to me, how much they sit with me, how much I think about them. So please if you are inclined to leave a message for me, please leave a message for me. I love nothing more than reading your comments. It's my favorite thing in the world. And even if I don't respond immediately, I really, really try to respond. But it's like when you comment, you're creating the energy of this podcast. So whether it's about parenting or yarn or knitting or books or whatever, I love your comments. So I had to tell you that. The energy here has a lot to do with you. What have I been reading? I told you guys I was reading Klara and the Sun. Isn't that what it's called? I forgot what it's called. That's a bad sign. It's by Kazuo Ishiguro, and I have to say, I think I'm bailing out. I can't do it anymore. I think I've read half of it. It's just not landing with me. And the other day, okay, this is always a bad sign when you just don't want to read the book. Like all of vacation, I did not listen to 1 second of the book. And normally if I'm really into a book, even if it's 5 minutes while I'm, putting on sunscreen and braiding my hair to go out, I'm going to listen to the book because I love it so much. I had zero desire, didn't listen to 1 second of it. When I got back on Tuesday, I was like, I'm going to listen to some of it because I need to get back into it. I turned it on and I was just irritated instantly and I just couldn't stand it and I turned it off. And I just realized like, I don't think I owe the book anymore. Like I'm good. I feel like reading half of it was a fair shot. And if you don't care to get to the end by halfway point, you probably don't love this book. I was really sad and disappointed. I hate to say this, but in myself, because I was like, what am I missing? Like this book has gotten so much, it's just gotten rave reviews. It's gotten so much praise. It's won prizes. And it's just like, it's just not landing with me. And I love books with social commentary or, that reflect the author's, viewpoint on the world or whatever. But to me, that is always still secondary to the story. Like, I still want to just be super absorbed with the story. And then what is left after that and like the deeper meanings and, whatever, like that should still be secondary. If I want to just I don't know. The story did not captivate me. There was not a single character I cared about, not a single character that I was rooting for. They all just annoyed me. I mean, to be quite honest. And I was reading some New York Times reviews just to see, like, what did they say? And, it was a lot of kind of like, oh, well, it's a commentary on this and that. And I'm like, okay, but what about the story? Let's give me some story. And it didn't land. I would be so curious if any of you have read it. I know somebody had said they read it and they didn't really like it. So that makes two of us. I would love to know, but I cannot recommend that book. I am very sorry. I'm really bummed. I had such a good go of books recently, and this one wasn't it. Not it for me. I think I'm going to download The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. It is a parenting book by a parenting expert. Her name is Lisa D'Amour. She has her own podcast. She is a psychiatrist. I always get psychiatrist and psychologist mixed up. Please don't judge me. It's just the truth. So I don't know which one she is, but she has a podcast. She writes for the New York Times. She specializes in teenagers. And I am ravenous for parenting advice. It just helps me so much. So I have her and then Dr. Becky Kennedy. I love them both. Dr. Becky Kennedy, I think, is more, she kind of is more for younger kids, and I have a 9-year-old, and I think her stuff is super applicable. Like, her principles are applicable across the board, not just to parent-child relationships, but to all relationships. But Lisa D'Amour specializes in teenagers, and I can't get enough of help when it comes to teenagers, just because I remember being a teenager, and I just want to do right by my kids, and I want to keep building a really strong relationship. So whenever there's somebody that has really strong advice, I'm here for it. So I will probably listen to her book. I will report back if it's good. You should get it. The other thing that just made me giggle the other day was I was recommending to you guys a couple weeks ago Susan Cain's book, Bittersweet. And I was telling you how much I loved it and what a worthy read it is. And then this week, I saw that Oprah picked it for her book club, and it just made me laugh because I was like, Oprah and I are on the same page. So if you don't trust me, you definitely should trust Oprah. It is a spectacular book, and they're going to do kind of a where you read part of it and then she discusses it with her. So I'm definitely going to tune into that. Maybe I'll read Bittersweet again. The audio of that is spectacular. It is a book that I cannot recommend enough. It normalized so much of my personality to me, just because I'm such a broody kind of person, and she kind of just felt like a kindred spirit to me. And I just love that book. So listen to me and Oprah and go read Bittersweet. The other thing I really quickly wanted to recommend to you, I know we're running up to 45 minutes, and I don't like to keep you too long because y'all got places to be and fiber to knit. But I really wanted to recommend to you our favorite road trip podcast. So we do a lot of driving when we travel, because we live in Colorado and we go ski a ton when it's ski season. We drive a lot. We are lucky enough to live within driving distance of some of the best skiing in the world. And my husband, who always drives, which I'm not going to complain that he wants to do the driving, because guess what I'm doing? Knitting. But if I listen to like an audiobook in the car, if we listen to an audiobook, it doesn't matter the audiobook, he gets sleepy, which is not a good combination for driving in the mountains, in the ice and snow. So our favorite podcast to listen to together is called Even the Rich. It is such like juicy, indulgent floof, but at the same time has enough like value and substance that it's the perfect road trip podcast for adults. I wouldn't recommend it with kids. Basically, it's these two friends, and every season, which tends to be like 3 or 4 episodes, they have a celebrity and they just talk about their lives. It's basically like a biography of a celebrity. For instance, the one we listened to coming back from Beaver Creek was about Lucille Ball. It was amazing. It's funny, it's entertaining, their chemistry is really good. And I love learning like her whole life history, like from her childhood, the crazy stuff that she suffered, how hard she worked, what it was like for her as a woman in those years to build like this revolutionary show starring a woman, her relationship with Desi Arnaz. It was so good. I love that show. I think there's like 40 different people they have, what's the word? Covered? I don't know. One of the ones that I resisted listening to was the Will Smith season. And it ended up being one of my favorite seasons because it just showed him in such a, human light and all his experiences that have led to his present moment. Just beautiful, like really fun, but still substantive enough to not make you just feel kind of gross and voyeuristic. You know what I mean? Like Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey season was incredible. It just shows how incredible these people are and how hard they've worked to get to where they are. So I highly recommend Even the Rich. It's a Wondery podcast. Wondery does a lot of fun podcasts, but that one is by far my favorite. Really great car podcast. Last podcast, and I'm going to let you go. You've probably gone by now, but I'm going to have to say it. I discovered it earlier this week. It's called Next Year in Moscow. It is an economist podcast. It's possibly the most polar opposite from Even the Rich as you could possibly get. Anyway, this is the 1-year anniversary of the Russian war in Ukraine, which I have been just binging every podcast I can right now about the conflict. I have cried. It's just so much emotions, so much suffering, so much pain. But I love to just be informed. I need to know what's happening. And this podcast just started. They've only released 1 episode, but it's about what's happening in Russia and kind of the Russian people and the perspective from there. And I just think it's a really unique, beautifully researched, valuable podcast. So it's the Economist's podcast, Next Year in Moscow. I highly, highly recommend it. The first episode was outstanding. I can't wait to listen to the next one. Okay, you guys, I talked your ear off. I apologize. I hope you're having a wonderful week. If it is your weekend, I hope you're going to have a fabulous one. It's been so cold here. I mean, like the last few days, it's been -8 and just like you cannot feel your face when you go walk the dogs kind of thing. So this weekend it's supposed to warm up substantially and I am thrilled. I love cold weather, but even I'm starting to like struggle. I'm having to like sleep in hand knits because it's so cold. But anyway, I hope it's lovely weather where you are, good knitting weather, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye friends.